In the endless sands of the Egyptian desert, hidden from the eyes of man for over 3,000 years, lies a secret older than the pyramids themselves. It is not a tomb of gold or a vault of treasure, but something far more powerful, a bed. They call it the bed of the Forgotten Pharaoh. Some say it was carved for a prince who was never crowned. Others whisper that it's a portal, a place between the living and the dead. But one truth echoes through time: anyone who sleeps in that bed does not wake in this world. Tonight, we tell the story not just of a bed, but of a love, a betrayal, a curse, and a return. The year is 2022. A group of explorers stumble upon the lost city of the pharaohs. And among the ruins, they find an old woman, the last of her line, guarding the secret of the Forgotten Pharaoh. She tells them of a prophecy that foretells the return of her people and the awakening of the Forgotten Pharaoh. But to do so, someone must sleep in the bed and break the curse that has kept him trapped for 3,000 years. What would you do if you discovered an ancient tomb that was filled with ominous warnings? Would you dare open it? Well, in 2023, an archaeological team did just that. But soon after, strange things started happening. What they found inside the coffin-shaped chamber shocked them all. And when they attempted to leave the site, they realized they had accidentally unleashed something they shouldn't have. It all began at the start of 2023 when Dr. Miriam Hassan and her colleagues descended into the Egyptian desert in hot pursuit of a rumor. Local villagers had spoken of a hidden tomb, one never recorded in history books, one so frightening that it defied belief. But where exactly was it? After several weeks of surveying the area, scanning for buried treasures, the team stumbled upon the ruins of Abydos. This was once a necropolis, a vast burial ground dedicated to the god of the dead, Osiris. Here, pharaohs, priests, and the most commoners came to die, convinced it would lead them directly into the arms of the divine king. And there, nestled between the shifting dunes and hidden beneath collapsed sandstone, was a small shaft leading down into the earth. The archaeologists hadn't come across this during their previous scans, so why was it suddenly visible? Had the sand shifted? Perhaps, but there was something else. Carved above the opening was a design they couldn't quite make out, but which seemed to be a door made of solid black granite. We think it may have been broken at some point in the past, says Dr. Hassan, but it was sealed shut when we arrived. Whatever was down here was well hidden. But how could they possibly know what was down there without taking a look? Well, they didn't have much choice. They decided to excavate the sand and see what lay within. We didn't know what we would find, so we proceeded very slowly, Dr. Hassan explained. Each grain of sand had to be removed by hand, and it was painstaking work. It took 6 days to remove all of the sand. Then they began to uncover more parts of the door, carefully brushing away centuries of grime. As the true nature of the shaft revealed itself, excitement rippled through the team. This wasn't just a shaft, it was a tomb. A perfectly preserved tomb untouched for more than 4,000 years. At last, they were able to pull open the heavy granite door. And inside, instead of riches or mummies, they found a single room. There were no sarcophagi, no hieroglyphics, no statues of gods or offerings left by worshippers. On the walls were no paintings depicting scenes from the afterlife or even the deceased's name. There was nothing except a bare suggestion of a design on the floor. The team shone their torches over the designs and gasped. Etched into the stone was a map, an intricate map showing a route through the underworld. The journey of the soul, they realized, from death to rebirth. And in the center of the room was a single object. As they moved closer, they saw that it was a bed, 7 feet long, carved from wood darkened by centuries and shaped at the legs like lion's paws. It seemed almost alien-like in its simplicity. The team began to run tests on the wood to try and determine its origins. But before they could get too far, Dr. Hassan noticed something strange. The linen wraps clinging to the bed frame. These looked like the burial wrappings used for mummies. Could this be a mummy bed? They tried pulling the wrappings off, but they were stuck fast. They looked more like a tight bandage now, fused to the bed by centuries of dirt and dust. Was whatever was under here really mummified? After hours of work, the team finally managed to cut the bandages into strips. Inside, they found another surprise. The remains weren't human. The skeleton seemed to belong to an animal, perhaps a crocodile or a hippopotamus. But this wasn't just any beast. This was a sacred creature, the embodiment of a god. See, crocodiles and hippos were considered sacred animals in Egypt. People believed they were the physical forms of the gods Sobek and Toret. And where there are gods, there are often tombs. The team continued digging and found a series of fragments bearing strange symbols. They carefully brushed them off by hand and pieced them together. It formed a single phrase, one word, silence. They repeated the word over and over, trying to understand its meaning. It was clear that it was supposed to be a warning. But why? Warning about what? Then Dr. Hassan remembered the myths. Sobek, the crocodile god, was said to live in the underworld. He was the guardian of the scales of justice, the ferryman who carried souls across the river Styx. He demanded absolute silence. Those who spoke loudly, he punished severely. Their souls were trapped in the underworld for eternity. And then they noticed the bed. The layout of the room, the very design of the warning, suggested that whoever or whatever lay on the bed should be treated with reverence. Like a sleeping god, whoever disturbed him would unleash chaos on the world. The team carefully covered the bed back up, not wanting to disturb it any further. They sealed the entrance to the tomb, placing stones in front of it to prevent anyone from coming in. Then they left, hoping to study the mysterious bed further in the safety of their lab. But the next morning, when they returned to the site, the stones were gone. Someone had entered the tomb. They hurried to the entrance, pushing aside the sand, only to gasp in shock. The bed was empty. There was no trace of it anywhere. Was it a dream? The team stood outside the tomb, shaken. Why did the bed disappear? Did they disturb the sleeping god? Was he angry? The wind began to scream, whipping sand across their faces. It felt like the desert itself was groaning. The team packed up and hurried home, each convinced they'd unleashed a curse. But little did they know, they weren't the only ones who had discovered the tomb. Deep in the heart of Cairo, someone was stirring. He'd heard rumors of the lost tomb and knew exactly where to find it. That night, as lightning cracked across the sky, he entered the chamber, but he wasn't there to pay his respects. His name was Mahmud, and he dealt in antiquities. In fact, he was wanted for stealing priceless artifacts and selling them to private collectors around the world. Now, hearing that there was an undiscovered tomb somewhere in the desert, he just had to see it for himself. He knew the locals wouldn't take him there, so he went alone. He crawled through the shaft, desperate to see what riches awaited him. But when he found the chamber, he saw that the bed was already gone. Had those pesky archaeologists stolen everything? Was that why they had blocked the entrance? Mahmud scoffed. Let them have their fun. He knew there would be more treasures to steal in this ruined city. He turned and stumbled backwards. But before he knew it, he was falling. The collapsing sand pinned him to the ground. Struggling, he managed to claw his way free, but it was too late. The entrance had collapsed. He was trapped. Mahmud panicked. He clawed at the sand, but it only buried him deeper. And then he saw the map on the floor. It depicted the journey of the soul, and he realized he had taken the wrong path. Now the gods were angry, and he wouldn't escape punishment. With the roof caving in, he knew he wouldn't get out. So he did the only thing he could. He took off his backpack and dropped it to the ground, spilling the contents across the floor. There were knives and flashlights, ropes and compasses, tools of his trade. But there was something else, something that glinted in the torchlight. It was a copper plate etched with ancient hieroglyphics. Mahmud recognized it instantly. It was the same plate that warned of silence, the very same one that covered the missing bed. In terror, he watched as the wall collapsed. He was buried alive, down in the darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of the past. He could hear the growl of the crocodile god, the sound of his wrath. Then everything went silent. Mahmud was gone. In the morning, the wind carried a whisper across the desert, the story of a grave robber cursed for eternity. And as the sun rose higher, those who stood at the edge of the shaft could swear they heard the faintest of growls echoing from the depths of the earth. This is the story of the pharaoh who loved a slave. 3,200 years ago in the 19th dynasty, a second son was born to Pharaoh Sedarak the Great. He was named Amun-Ra, which means Amun is the king's son. He was a prince meant for the priesthood, not the throne. But Amun-Ra was no ordinary boy. From the age of 10, he dreamed of fire, of foreign lands, of thrones in ruin. He was obsessed with time, measuring stars, watching shadows, asking forbidden questions. Because in ancient Egypt, the future wasn't set in stone. It could be carved that way. Amun-Ra wanted to know how. He learned the art of reading the skies, of foretelling the future. He also learned there were things you weren't supposed to know. Things that could get you killed. Like when your pharaoh father is about to die. When Amun-Ra was just 16, he saw the death of Sedarak in a vision. And he told his mother, Queen Tai, who was also the pharaoh's great royal wife. But she didn't want to hear it. She threw him out of her court, made sure everyone knew the prince was crazy. So at 17, Amun-Ra did something crazy. He shaved his head, the most shameful thing you could do in Egypt, and fled his home in Thebes, hiding amongst the slaves. He walked across the desert until his feet bled, then took up residence in a tomb, wrapped himself in linen and starved until he saw the face of death. But it didn't take him. Maybe he wasn't supposed to die. Or maybe it was the Nubian princess. Amun-Ra wasn't the only one with visions. Half a world away, in the kingdom of Kush, modern-day Sudan, Princess Nefertiti dreamt of a boy. She'd never met him, but she knew his smell. The smell of frankincense, myrrh, lotus, and something wilder, something untamed, like a desert wind. In her dreams, they raced chariots across fields of fire and ice, and they spoke in a language that was half sign, half word. Her parents, King Kashta and Queen Armana, had arranged for Nala to marry a prince from a neighboring kingdom. But every night she would dream of the boy from Thebes and pray for dawn so she could ask her handmaidens about the language of signs, about the taste of smoke and dust on her lips, about the scent of lotus that clung to his skin. Then one day, the king announced that the wedding would happen the next night. And while Amara prepared for her new life, she prayed for a miracle. That same day, a starving teenager left the protection of the tombs and begged for work in the royal palace of Kush. He was hired as a lowly servant, working in the kitchens. That way he was close to the princess, but he still had to hide from her. Still, sometimes he saw her from afar, walking in the gardens, riding a horse, dancing under the moonlight. He couldn't talk to her, but he watched her. He memorized her laugh, the way she held herself, how her eyes glinted like obsidian. And she watched him too. She saw the boy with haunted eyes and tangled hair, the boy whose gaze could burn a hole through her soul, the boy who smelled like frankincense, myrrh, and lotus. On the night of the princess's wedding, the entire city turned out to watch. The procession arrived. The king rode first, followed by his wife, then Amara on her golden chariot. She was the last to walk. She was supposed to enter the reception hall and take her place on the throne. But when she reached the entrance, she stopped. The moment she laid eyes on the boy with haunted eyes and tangled hair, everything changed. For Amara, time froze. She slid off her throne and ran toward the servant boy. He was shocked. He wanted to hide, but she kept coming closer and closer. Soon she was right in front of him. "Who are you?" she whispered. "My name is Amun-Ra," he replied. "I am nothing." She touched his cheek, then closed the distance between them, and they kissed. The kiss tasted like lotus and smoke. It smelled like frankincense, myrrh, and desire. When they broke apart, the world spun around them, and the boy who was nothing became everything to her. They ran out of the city together, side by side, away from everything and everyone, until they found themselves at the edge of the desert. "Who are you?" He asked her. "I am a princess," she said, "and now I am yours." Then they walked into the desert. They had each other and all the time in the world. For a few days, they walked in silence, not because they had nothing to say, but because the desert was full of sounds, the whisper of sand, the cry of the wind, the buzzing of flies, the croaking of frogs, the bleating of goats. It was hard to hear anything else over all that noise. so they walked and listened. Then the sun beat down harder, and the water ran out. And it was then that Amon-Ra realized he didn't know this girl at all. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She was even more beautiful up close. Her black skin shone like polished ebony. Her eyes, deep set and almond-shaped, were the color of rich earth. Her full red lips were parted slightly, revealing a glimpse of white teeth. Her high cheekbones and strong jawline hinted at her fierce spirit. Her hair, styled in intricate braids, adorned with golden ornaments, framed a face that could launch 1,000 ships and conquer an empire. But she was thirsty, and he didn't know if she was worth dying for, not yet anyway. So he did the only thing he could. He pushed her toward the nearest oasis. "There's water there," he said, "maybe some food too." When she didn't move, he grabbed her hand and pulled her along. At first she resisted, but as the sun climbed higher and the thirst took hold, she let him lead her on. Days later, when they were finally close to the oasis, Amon-Ra felt a twinge of guilt. Maybe he should have carried her when she fainted, but looking at her sleeping face, he understood. He loved her as much as she loved him. So he carried her to the water. He woke her up, and she drank until her heart was full. Then he held her as she fell asleep again. And when she woke up again, he helped her to her feet. He led her to the shade of a large tree and sat beside her. "Are you going to leave me?" she asked. He hesitated, unsure how to answer. Should he tell her the truth? He didn't know where he was going. All he knew was that he didn't want to be a prince anymore, not after seeing what it was like to have nothing. Nala looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Don't lie to me," she whispered. "You're not a prince." He shook his head. "Then what are we going to do?" He shrugged. He didn't know. She stood up, brushing the dirt off her dress. "I have an idea," she said, taking his hand. "Let's build a house here. We can start a new life." He squeezed her hand. That sounded good. They worked side by side, building a small hut out of sticks and mud bricks. When it was finished, they moved in. Amon-Ra slept on the ground, but Nala insisted that he share her bed. "We may be poor," she said, "but we're not dirty." He smiled and snuggled close to her. He didn't remember the last time he'd been this happy. Months passed. Their hut was just big enough for a bed and a fire, but it was home, and their love grew stronger with each passing day. Then, one day, while Amon-Ra was gathering wood, he heard the sound of a royal procession. He hid behind a bush and watched as a group of nobles arrived at the hut. "Your Highness," one of them said, kneeling before Nala, "the queen wishes to know if you will return to Thebes." She stood up, smoothing the dirt off her dress. "Tell her I will not be returning," she said. Amon-Ra came out from his hiding place and stood beside her. One of the nobles looked at him, surprised. "Who are you?" "I am her husband," he said, "and we are expecting a child." The nobles gasped. One of them fainted. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Our love will be their greatest gift." 9 months later, the queen arrived with an entourage of nobles and servants. They were welcomed with open arms. "Look at you," the queen said, embracing Nala. "You look terrible." She helped Nala onto a nearby chair. "Have you come to arrest me?" Nala asked. The queen shook her head. "No, silly girl. I have come to meet my grandson." Amon-Ra and Nala exchanged a look. This was their moment now. They had each other, their love, and their son. As far as Amon-Ra was concerned, that was all that mattered. The last few days of our excavation at Karnak were strange to say the least. Strange glyphs appeared on the chamber walls. Glyphs that weren't ancient but fresh. Whoever made them hid them well. They were carved around the edges of the chamber just above the waterline so that only the keenest eyes would see them, and yet somehow I saw them all. First, there was this circle with what looked like a sunburst inside it, kind of like a mandala maybe. That was new. Around it was written, "I have seen the end." Below that we found more glyphs which when deciphered told us, "And it begins in dreams." Then there were just more circles and strange symbols. We don't even know what those meant. Then strange things started happening. Things that can be explained by science. We chalked those up to stress or lack of sleep, but it continued for weeks. First, the bed started vibrating really subtly. It was only when I went to sit down that I noticed it, and then it stopped as soon as I got up again. I chalked it up to a trick of my mind until Amelia felt it too. She sat down, looked at me, and then we both heard it. A low vibration like the engine of a distant truck, but it wasn't on the surface. It was coming from below us. Sometimes when we were working in the shaft, the bed would begin to vibrate really intensely, and it would cause rocks to fall from the ceiling. One evening, we lit some candles and the flames sputtered and died almost immediately. Another time, a lantern hanging overhead flickered and suddenly turned black and white like an old movie. Our computers also suffered random shutdowns. At first it was daily, but then it became multiple times a day. Suddenly, one morning the bed was empty. There was nothing there. Not a single mark where something had been dragged. No dust disturbed around it. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. We searched everywhere. We climbed onto the roof of the tomb, jumped into the shaft, waded through the waterlogged tunnels, but there was no sign of it. I walked back to the bed in the main chamber to find it. As I approached, the ground beneath me vibrated. In its place on the floor was a scroll wrapped in modern cloth. Unfurling it, I saw that it was written in Arabic, and I realized it was in Dr. Hassan's handwriting. I showed it to a colleague who translated it for me. It said, "Time bends, dreams fold." I have gone to him. He is not forgotten. He is awake. Was the bed moved by whatever force had taken Dr. Hassan? Could he have gone away with it? Why would he leave behind his notebook, his computer, his camera equipment, his shovel? What did that last message mean? What did it mean for the bed to be awake? We had to stop our dig. We couldn't get into the burial chamber anymore. The hieroglyphics on the way threatened any who entered. My gut feeling was that if we tried to push on, we wouldn't come back. The shaft was filled with muddy water. The passageway collapsed and we never found the entrance again. Some say it's still there, though hidden somewhere under the temple complex, watched over by the lion-footed one. It's been 3 years since I dreamed of Egypt for the first time. 3 years since I dreamt of the lion-footed bed. It's been 3 years since I met Amun-Ra. I wish I could say that I haven't thought of him, but the truth is I think of him often. I wonder if he remembers me, if he thinks of me sometimes. I wonder what he's doing now, if he's sleeping, dreaming, waiting. When I dreamed of the lion-footed bed, it was clear that it was calling to me, beckoning me closer. And although I knew that it might be dangerous, I also knew that I couldn't resist a call. In my dream, I could feel the energy of the bed, the power that it held. I wanted to understand it, to learn more about it. I wanted to know why it was there, why it was calling to me. In my dream, I knew that the bed was ancient, that it had been there for thousands of years. I could sense its age, its history, the countless stories it could tell. I was drawn to it, fascinated by it. But I was also scared because I could feel the darkness that clung to it, the evil that it seemed to hold. I was afraid of what it might do to me, what it might try to take from me. In my dream, I didn't hesitate. I walked towards the bed, towards the danger. I didn't try to run away, to hide. I didn't try to fight it. I embraced it. I wanted to know what it was, what it meant. And as I approached the bed, the darkness grew stronger. I could feel it closing in on me, suffocating me, trying to consume me. I struggled against it, but it was too strong. It was too powerful. As I reached out to touch the bed, the darkness enveloped me, and I woke up screaming. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding, my skin clammy, my breath ragged. It was just a dream, I told myself. Just a dream. But even as I said it, I knew that it wasn't. Now I hear his voice every night, whispering to me from the darkness. Amun-Ra is his name. Amun-Ra is his name. He wants me to come back, to return to the bed. He wants me to finish what I started, to fulfill my destiny. Amun-Ra is his name. Amun-Ra is his name. And I want to go back. I want to see him again. I want to feel his touch, to hear his voice, to know his love. So tell me, if you found the bed, would you lie down on it? Would you embrace the darkness and risk everything? Or would you walk away and leave it untouched? I found it, but I didn't walk away. I lied down on it. And when I did, I felt his presence envelop me, his love, his power, his eternity. I felt him take me from this world and place me in his. I felt him show me the past, the present, and the future. I felt him teach me the secrets of the universe. I felt him open my eyes, my mind, and my heart. But I also felt him break my soul, my body, and my will. I felt him tear my life from me and cast it into the abyss. I felt him drain my blood and replace it with his darkness. I felt him steal my identity and make it his own. I felt him bind my spirit to his forever. And then I woke up screaming.